Willem Bekink interview. Den Haag, the Netherlands. Time roughly 12:30. The date, the 10th of the 3rd, 2004. Good morning, Willem.
Hello,
Thank you.
Brian.
Thank you very much for volunteering to be interrogated.
Well, you're welcome. I hope I can answer all your questions.
I have a deja vu feeling about this, isn't it? This is okay. How many styles of martial arts do you practice at present, and how long did you practice them?
Well, at present I'm stuck on Katori Shinto Ryu, as you well know, Kashima Shin Ryu, and I do a little bit of Todaha Buko Ryu, which is mostly on naginata.
And how did you get interested in martial arts in the very beginning?
Well, as you might remember, or maybe you do not remember, but maybe you have heard about it, that before the war you had those famous films, Mr. Motor films,
Oh, I know them.
with starring Peter Lorre, and we were fascinated by a small guy soaring through the room, huge, big bellies, and so I got enthusiastic for Jiu-Jitsu. And my first lessons were with a famous Dutch Jiu-Jitsu teacher called Van Nieuwenhuizen. He was one of the first who started with Jiu-Jitsu in the Netherlands. That was around 1937, 1938. In 1939 I went to Indonesia and I started working with a Dutch import and export trading company called Borsime. And we had a relation who was Japanese, working with a Japanese company, Chiyoda, a certain Mr. Watanabe, and he gave me lessons in Jiu-Jitsu at that time. I have never heard then about schools or Ryu or whatever. It was just plain Jiu-Jitsu, and I still don't remember what school it was at that time. Anyway, as you know, the war started, and I was drafted into the military service. I had a special fascination for fencing arts. So during my military service I also practiced fencing with saber. When the Japanese occupied Indonesia, I went into, as a prisoner of war, I was caught as a prisoner of war during 3.5 years. During that period I saw soldiers, Japanese soldiers, practicing kendo, and that was very fascinating. I thought, well, that is the thing that I would like to do, become more acquainted with. But unfortunately, at that time, the Japanese were your enemy, so you didn't mix with them. But I thought maybe at a later date, normal times will return, and then I will investigate about that. After the war, I went to Holland, but only for a short time, because life was not very comfortable after the war, and well, if you had to be poor, it was better to be poor in a tropical climate, because next to being poor in Holland, you also had a freezing climate. So I went back to Indonesia for an American company, and later, a year later, started my own business. I was very busy then, so I didn't have much time to do any sports. But after a year or two in Indonesia, I say around 48, 49, I started again with judo at that time. Kendo was not known, and kendo at that time was forbidden in the United States as well by the occupation forces, who were afraid that it would be a sort of starting again the Bushido philosophy. So they forbid the use of swords. I returned to Holland in 1961 and went on practicing judo in the Netherlands. And in around 1966, 66 or 67, we had a judo teacher who knew a little about kendo. And then we started doing kendo in Holland with about 5, 6 men and practicing what we thought was kendo. But in 1967 we get our first teachers from Japan over, and then we saw what kendo really was. That developed, and I think that at the moment in the Netherlands there are about 400 kendoka practicing kendo. I did it for a great number of years. Say I did it until 1982, 83. I participated in the World Championships in London in 1976, and in 1977 we organized in the Netherlands the first international kendo seminar in the sports center Papendal in the Netherlands, and participating were practically all the European countries: Ireland, England, Scotland, Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, etc. It was really a huge happening, and a very that was the start of the you may say of the kendo movement in the Netherlands. The problem was that I was aging and I couldn't keep up with the dynamic kendo. I got shorter of breath because that's a thing. Your body ages and deteriorates in the coming years. Another thing that made me stop kendo was that it was strictly a sport, and with a sport the problem is that the sport is always regulated. You have rules. If you have the real things, there are no rules.
Okay.
It's the target is your whole body, and in kendo the target was limited. It is the same. You can compare it with judo and jiu-jitsu. With judo, they took all the dangerous things out of jiu-jitsu, and then you have judo, which you can use as a competitive sport. But you can't use jiu-jitsu as a competitive sport because your target is to break somebody's leg or arm, or to turn his neck or his head, whatever. And that at that time I already was, before I was interested in the classical traditions of the sword. So I had many interviews with old masters of the traditional classical Japanese sword schools.
Okay. Okay. Who were your teachers in Katori?
Well, there are quite a number of teachers, and I think the best thing I could do is to refer to my book, in which they are all on a list together. I can name them, of course, but I don't think that it makes any sense. But among them are Nakakura, who was a Hachidan in Muso Shinden, Yamashibu, who was a Hachidan in Muso Jikiden Ryu sword fighting. I had lessons from Sugino, who was an old gentleman and one of the last surviving old generation sword fighters. I have lessons from Yamada, who is a teacher from the Otake school, and so there are many others that I could mention. I practiced, actually, I had you may say a sort of introduction in Hoki Ryu, Tamiya Ryu. I have a third dan degree in Muso Jikiden Ryu. Well, that's about it.
And what grades do you hold for Kendo and Judo?
For Kendo I have a third dan, and for Judo I never came past the first dan, shodan.
That's quite a lot of grades and styles, Willem. You're very modest about it. How did you, well, do all of the martial arts styles that you use at present use weapons?
Yeah.
Okay, and what is your favourite martial arts weapon and why do you prefer it?
Well, actually I favor, of course, I favor the sword, because the sword is, you may say, the father of all of the Japanese fighting art.
Okay.
And from that, it was the main weapon at the time, it was the weapon of the samurai, and I like the feeling of a sword, and such as I like the feeling of the saber before.
Yeah. How old are you?
Well, presently, problem is, what do you mean? By years I'm 85, by heart I'm 80. But the problem is that my age and my feeling do not match, because when I like to do as an 80-year-old boy, my body comes lagging behind, you know, so that's
Okay.
the only unharmonious thing that there is in my life.
And is there any injuries at this stage or that you have that slow you down in doing
Oh
martial
yeah,
arts?
certainly, and you know, like with an old car, you're really falling apart in the end. So you have bearings that get stuck, and the same as with your body. My knees have gone, I can't do sensei anymore. I'm a little stiff and creaky, but still I try to do my best to keep moving.
Okay. In Kendo, did you have a favourite technique for defence or attack?
Not really. The problem with Kendo is that, you know, in the old days the Japanese all were small and they were about the same size. But these days you have small guys and tall guys. So when I come across a guy of my own stature, I take the man and kote. If it's a tall guy, I concentrate on kote because that's the nearest target that I have before my eyes. But actually there's no favorite technique.
And what is the name of your club and where is it situated?
Well, I started the Dutch Kendo Club in Den Haag, which is the Kendo Kai.
Okay.
Kendo Kai Den Haag. And I'm still an honorary member of that club. It has existed now about 30 years, more than 30 years, so it's a long time ago.
It's a long time for a
Yeah.
club to exist without too much infighting.
But as I say, I do not do any Kendo anymore.
And what about your Katori and Kashima?
Well, actually it's not a club, it's a personal activity, because it's not formalized as a club.
Okay.
You know, I'm a teacher and I teach it, and it's my own private circle. I'm not connected with any other federation or whatever. I like to be free, and also I like to be free in the choice of my pupils, my students, because I ask from my students, which I limited very much. Katori Shinto is a very difficult discipline to teach, so not like Kendo, you cannot do it in a mass teaching.
Okay.
You have to give so much personal attention that I keep my students limited. And I choose them, I want to have a good atmosphere in my club and a nice being together.
Okay. How many years is this, I can't call it a club, organised?
Well, my Katori Shinto club or circle or whatever you mention it, you call it, I started it in 1981.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many members do you have, or students training under you?
I lost track of them. Many have disappeared because some fall off, they can't keep up. Some others were removed because they didn't attend to the lessons regularly. It's one strict formula. If you want to do Katori, you must commit yourself to be present at every training session. People these days are not so motivated as they used to be. I remember in my days when I was doing kendo every day. When I stood up in the morning, I practiced making suburi. In the evening, before I went to bed, I made suburi. In lunchtime, when everybody went to the restaurant, when I was still working, I went down in the cellars and started practicing sword drawing or Iaido. So I was busy day and night with the kendo. But these days I sometimes suspect also my own students that they train very well when they are present, and when they come home they put their bokken in the corner and they take it away, take it with them the next training session. But actually you should train all the time. And I even advise them sometimes, even if you watch television, take your bokken in your hand, because you must get acquainted with the feeling. The secret of the sword is hidden in the feeling, in that feeling. You must make it a part of yourself. When you have made it part of yourself, then you have also discovered the secret of the sword.
Are there any club memories that you and your members are especially proud of? I know I have to use club because I can't come up with a word at the moment that will actually suit what you have as your organisation. Are there any club memories that stand out?
I don't exactly understand what you mean.
Some big event that you hosted, or?
No, not really. A big event is always when we have a good teacher over from Japan, or when we go to Japan. Those are big events, because then you discover, you always think you're finished and that you know the thing, but when you come to the next session with a great master, you see there's something more that you can add to your knowledge. There's a never-ending, it's a never-ending thing.
And the Katori, who would you consider great masters at present?
Well, in first place Otake Sensei, but also Yamada Sensei, who is a qualified teacher from the Otake school, and also with the previous late Sugino Sensei. He was an old man, he was 94 years, he was very brittle, but still you get a kick because you felt behind that bokken, even if he was feeble, there was an experience of maybe 80 years, because he started at the age of 8. So you know he had that feeling, and that you felt, that was very, you could respond to that.
Are there any martial heroes outside of the Katori that you would, a hero to you that you would choose?
Oh yes, actually all the great schools, you know, are in fact very prominent sword masters in their time, in their own style. And I think they are all great. They are great people. I admire them all very much.
Excellent. I think we'll give it a break there because we've gone through the page. And we'll just have a quick look at what the video is saying. Willem Bekink, second part of the interview. I see you've been awarded medals by both the Netherlands and Japan in your efforts to bridge the gap in foreign relations between these two countries. Could you tell me more about this?
Well, you know, there is we have a sort of painful relation with Japan because of the occupation of the Netherlands Indies, and the loss of our colonies was also due to the Japanese occupation, as you might know. So there's a lot of sentiment against the Japanese in general. I did a lot to promote a better relationship between Japan and the Netherlands, and also between Indonesia and the Netherlands, because I think that the main problem is we are different cultures, and if you don't know about another culture, you always think there's something wrong in the communication. If you understand the other one's culture, you can understand also his behavior. And one of the main things during my occupation, during my years of prisoner of war, was that we didn't know anything about the Japanese. And we had a sort of fixed idea that they were cruel and mean and slit-eyed bastards. And at that time they were, but that was not because they were really bastards, but a system made them bastards. In my opinion, I don't believe there are any bad peoples, but there are many bad systems. And a system, after all, is making, if you go to war now, you're a nice, easygoing man, but you turn into an animal after a few years of war.
Okay.
That is inevitable. So that's what I did. People have accused me of saying that I have forgotten all the things that Japanese have done to us during the war. But you can't hate people. I never could bring up to hate people that I've never seen, I can hate them personal, I can have a personal hatred to somebody who does me bad things, but not a people as a whole. For my efforts in that regard, I was awarded by Her Majesty the Queen, I was knighted by her, and about some years later, I had the same thing by the Japanese did to me. I got the Order of the Sacred Treasure of Japan with gold rays. And I thought that was a very nice thing to receive, of course. I don't know if I fully earned it, but that's up to them.
Okay, what is your own your greatest triumph that you have done in martial arts? For you personally?
I don't know if you can speak of triumph. Triumph is a thing, when you master the techniques, you feel the triumph, But because it's not a competitive thing, I can never say I have won a game or I've mastered the universe or whatever, But mastering techniques gives you always the feeling of triumph. And I think also you have the feeling of triumph if one of your students is so apt, and you know that everything that you learn, he picks up and can produce. That's still
I think we're actually going to be running out on this one, so I'll stop it.